So the phone call itself, I remember we discussed the program, we discussed some of the ins and outs of it, and I told him that collecting ballots was a felony.
He was right in that sense of his concern that he should have had. Through the testimony I've listened to over the past 3 days, I believe a new election should be called.
Following 3 days of testimony, a new election has been ordered in North Carolina's 9th District.
You just heard testimony from Republican candidate Mark Harris and his son, who says he warned his dad about election fraud. Can you believe you have to testify against your dad? After months of demanding the results be certified, that he be declared the winner, Harris told the election board he now sees that confidence in the 2018 midterms has been undermined. Joe Bruno, he's a reporter for WSOC-TV in North Carolina. He just received the George Polk Award for his coverage of the investigation and was at this week's hearing. He's going to join us now via Skype to explain what happened and what we can expect to happen next. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, my first question to you is, where are we on this? And we're going to have a new election. How do we get to the point of having a new election? Seems like a pretty extreme thing we don't hear about very often.
Yeah, so basically, once Mark Harris got on the stand and said, I believe a new election should be called, it sealed the deal. All that had to happen at that point was the North Carolina State Board actually voting to let that happen. But basically, I think Mark Harris got to that point because he sat in that room, he listened to all the testimony through 3 days, including from one woman who said she went around and collected absentee ballots, went as far as to change and trace over the ink on certain ballot envelopes and make sure that the witness signatures all had the same ink on them. There's been allegations that some votes were filled in for other people when they left certain races blank, allegations that the early vote results were leaked ahead of time. And then I think the key moment that really struck Mr. Harris was when his son John essentially testified against him. And they pulled up the emails that showed that John was warning his father that McCrae Dallas could be operating in this illegal scheme.
But we don't think that he heard all this and then he had some kind of road to Damascus experience. He just realized he was busted, right?
Well, I'm not sure what Mr. Harris realized and when, but I will say that a lot of our reporting has been out there. We've been reporting for months about people going around and collecting absentee ballots. That in North Carolina is illegal. So that allegation is not new, but now Mr. Harris is hearing it under oath, and maybe that had a little more weight. And
Joe, just for folks in the audience who may not be as up on North Carolina politics, certainly as you are, what exactly happened here again? What was the backstory? I know we've had you on to talk about this, but it's been a little while. You had what go on here? Now we know that bad things happen, needs to be a new election. What were the bad things?
Well, it all started when the Board of Elections refused to certify the Mark Harris versus Dan McCready race because of claims of irregularities and potential fraud in the district, specifically in Bladen and Robeson counties. From our reporting, we discovered there was a man named McCrae Dallas who was essentially operating an absentee ballot operation that involved workers going around and illegally collecting absentee ballots. The thought there is that he sends them in batches and he can have an idea of how many ballots Mr. Harris had. And throughout this testimony this week, we found out that that was happening. There were multiple people involved, and that the early vote totals potentially did leak. But nobody knows who leaked them. And nobody really knows for a fact that they guaranteed that they leaked, but that those allegations are still out there, if that makes sense.
So the most amazing testimony to me, we just saw the clip here on the show, was the testimony of his son. Can you walk us through how the son ended up testifying against his dad?
The son brought the emails to the North Carolina State Board of Elections, and these emails were incredibly revealing. That he specifically sent the law to his father saying that it is illegal to collect absentee ballots. It seems like he was throwing red flag after red flag to his dad about McCrae Dallas and the operation that he was running. The reason he did that was because Mark Harris's opponent in the 2016 election, Todd Johnson, in the primary, he hired McCrae Dallas, and Todd Johnson received 221 of 226 absentee votes in that county, which is insane. That doesn't happen. And John Harris, Mark Harris's son, said, I'm looking at the data and it looks like these ballots are coming in batches. So it looks like somebody was going around and collecting these ballots and mailing them all at the same time. So here we have his son warning him about that operation. And Mark Harris, when he got on the stand, before he called for a new election, he kind of explained why he didn't value his son's warnings. He said his son was only 27 at the time, living in D.C. He had never been to Bladen County, never met McCrae Dallas, never met any of the local officials who were vouching for him. His son was basically making his opinion on data, and now he views those emails in a different light. But one thing that I think is important is he's 27 years old. He's a well-respected attorney in D.C. It's not like it's just some random guy living in the basement playing Fortnite all day. This is a well-respected person who is now the assistant U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of North Carolina. And here he is warning his father about McCrae Dallas. And his father didn't listen.
Do we expect that there are going to be additional or there'll be criminal charges that affect multiple people involved here? What's the criminal liability looking like? I know we got a new election, but it sounds like someone's got to be responsible for this.
Right now, there's a parallel criminal investigation going on right now. The Wake County District Attorney is leading that. She has been monitoring the hearing all week, and the North Carolina State Board is expected to send over their findings to her office, and then she can bring her charges to a grand jury. But we don't have a timeline for that.
Okay, can you just walk us through briefly the time we have left? What's going to happen in the next election? We hear Mark Harris might be sick. Is he running again? Is there a primary? Just kind of walk us through it a little bit. What do we expect?
Sure. North Carolina lawmakers recently passed a law requiring there to be a new primary if the State Board of Elections orders a new election. So that means we're going to have a primary for this. And my feeling is we'll have a whole crop of Republican candidates. But of course, people will wait to see if Mark Harris runs again or if the former 9th District Representative Robert Pittenger throws his hat in the ring again. But as far as the date goes, that has not been set. There's some thought that they may try to set up the timeline along with the 3rd congressional seat, which used to be Walter Jones's before he passed away. So we could have concurrent elections right there. Or there's some thought that they might try to set it up with Charlotte City Council's mayoral election, which is in November.
All right, Joe. Thanks so much, man. Good to have you back on this one, and we'll have to have a follow-up, so we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Coming up on Rising, legislation is officially on the floor to terminate the emergency declaration. How will the GOP vote on it?
Plus, the potential fallout from the Mueller findings. And of course, Mitch McConnell is forcing Democrats' hand on the Green New Deal. Our editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack, debriefs us all on this right here next.